Hi, everyone. It's Robert. We are going to go ahead and get started. It is 3 minutes after the hour. I usually like to let people filter in for the first 3 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to 2025, first of all. My gosh, I can't believe it's the new year. And also welcome to our very first Concierge Hour. This technically takes the place of our December Concierge Hour, which happened on, was supposed to happen on the day after Christmas, but we decided to postpone it due to the holiday. So this is now our first Concierge Hour for 2025. Welcome to the new year. Welcome to kicking things off with us here at Daniel House, and we really look forward to working with all of you moving forward. We also have a few folks who are thinking about joining the club who are joining us today, which is very cool and exciting. And we also have some highlights from the years past to discuss as well. I'll be going through, just like I always do, to discuss the site itself, go through some new features, talk about things. This is an opportunity for all of you to also ask questions as you see fit. So please interrupt. Please type in questions if you want into the chat, or just unmute yourself and ask a question if you need it as we go along. And then around 12:30, we have a very special guest today. Her name is Wendy Estela. I actually met Wendy about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago at this point. And I'm really excited to have her on board. She's an attorney who has sort of created this niche working with interior designers. And I went to a webinar that she had back in, I think it was November. And I met up with her the night before Peter and Alex, our two co-founders, did their talk at the New York School of Interior Design, and had a lovely meeting with her. And I thought, you need to be on our next Concierge Hour and talk about interior design and the law, because it's really important. And as somebody who used to work in the legal profession, I can say years ago, this is actually my second job, my second career. It can be a little confusing and also a little daunting. So hopefully Wendy's here to kind of talk you through some things, answer some questions, and just go through a primer of some basics around interior design and the law as well. Peter, do you want to give a few little hellos to everyone?
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Peter Spalding. I'm one of the co-founders of Daniel House Club. It is great to see you in 2025. I am kind of still on vacation, hence the I don't know, beautiful ponderosa pines behind me, but I was really excited because I feel like I can learn a lot from Wendy, so I wanted to join myself. So I'm really happy to see you all here. And Robert, Renee, Phil, and Johanna, great to see you too. Happy New Year.
Great.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year.
Hi, Renee. And Phil, you're there. Yes. Yes, I see you.
I'm unmuted. Hello. Happy New Year.
Great. And Johanna, are you there as well?
Actually, she
yeah,
might...
totally.
Oh, good. There you go. I thought maybe I was just getting emails back and forth from you, but
Oh no, multitasking.
Great. So we have our DHC team, and we also have the rest of our members here, the most important folks. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to take myself off of video because I'm going to be sharing my screen out with everybody. And then, like I said, if you have questions, feel free to just interrupt as we go along, or just type your questions into the chat, and the rest of our team will be looking out for your questions as we go along. All right? Okay. All right, so as we like to do with... Oops. I think someone has... Oh my goodness. Can you guys hear that?
Yes.
Okay, 1 second. Let me see. There must be something that is playing in the background. I apologize for that. 1 second. All right. Let's see here. All right. Now I will go ahead. Now that we all got our benediction exercise for the morning, we'll go ahead and share the screen out. All right. There we go. All right. So as I always like to do, I like to kind of start out these concierge hours by going through and just kind of doing a refresher training, talk about some new features of the site, etc. And then also allow all of you, of course, to ask questions as we go along. So you're probably familiar with our homepage here. And once you log in, you'll actually see your name appear at the top. And when you do that, you'll just click on, it'll automatically, first it'll go to your projects page, which is just your dashboard page. But you can also go and click on your name and click to the account page. And the account page gives you a lot of information. First, you can actually manage your account by upgrading or downgrading your account accordingly. I think all of you know at this point that we allow you to upgrade or downgrade with every month, depending on whatever your availability and however busy you might be. You can do that whenever you please, and it's self-administrating as well. So upgrade or downgrade there and take care of updating your account with your credit card information, etc. So a lot of self-administration things that you can do there through the manage my membership button. Mine says upgrade my account, but that's just because I have a special account. And then also on your account page, you'll see your orders. You'll see the date that they were placed, whether or not they were paid. Maybe there was a partial refund issued, etc. And then you'll also see what the fulfillment status is. So if the order's been fully fulfilled, it will say fulfilled. If it's been partially, it'll say partial. And then also the order amounts themselves. And then I can go to my dashboard here as well. I can also view all the addresses that I have in the system. So I can also change my address here if I want to for my account. So if I click on the dashboard link, it's now going to take me to all of my projects. So as you can see here, this has all of the projects that I've created. It will show the last 4 here. Now, I don't have 4 here because I've archived the other 3. But you have the ability to archive your projects as well. We'll talk about how to do that. This is really going to be sort of your dashboard to manage all of your projects. And I highly recommend doing project boards rather than just dumping items into your site cart here. That will still be tracked. However, when you do project boards, it really manages and organizes your projects accordingly. And also there's no limitation as to how many items you can have in a cart. Whereas in the site cart here, the cart itself starts getting a little funky when you have over 20 or 25 items in the site cart. And that unfortunately is not a limitation from Daniel House Club. It's just a limitation from Shopify, which runs our backend. So sometimes you may get an error message when you access it. That's probably because you have way too many items in your site cart. So I always recommend just creating a project, creating a board, even if it's just something like a mood project where you can pull from for inspiration for projects, or actually create a project that you're currently working on. Now I can also click on the view all button here to view all of my projects. And then also I can look at all of the archive projects as well. So once you're done with a project, you can archive it so you can get it out of the active project link. And then, as I mentioned, all you'll see here will be your 4 most recent projects. Couple of other things that we have here, there's a couple of help functionalities. So you can click on help, which will just take you to the contact us page. That way you can send us an email if you have a question about anything. If there's for some reason, there may be a claim, like a damage claim, a defect claim, or a warranty claim. You can also click on that link to start a claim, and it takes you to a form where you can upload photos, describe what the item is, put your order number in. It's a fairly self-administrating function of the site. And then that goes directly to our concierge team, and then we reply with an immediate confirmation that we received it. And then our RMA team takes care of it for all damage, defect, and warranty claims as well. And we work directly with the vendors on those. There's also a couple of links to our frequently asked questions page and how-to videos. The how-to videos are really helpful. Those actually show you how to create a project, how to create a board, how to create a cart, etc. So if you want to just review in the future, those things, you do have the ability to look at that. And then also a contact us page and the Meet with Concierge. This is actually new on your project dashboard. This is really nice because it'll take you directly to the concierge's, your concierge's calendar, where you can just book time directly with a concierge if you have questions about anything. So that function has been extremely helpful for a lot of our members and also for our prospective members as well. So I'm just going to go through here, and the dashboard screen not only shows you your recent projects, but it also shows you carts that you've created. And carts are, what I like to say, are static. They're basically a snapshot in time. Carts will not change as you change the project or the project board. So just know that when you create a cart, it is just a snapshot of that particular project board or multiple project boards at that point in time. So if for whatever reason, maybe you add something to a project board or multiple boards or take away items, just know that these carts here will not reflect that. So you'll just want to delete any carts that are not reflected of the entire project that you're actually trying to share with your client. However, once the cart is complete and you're ready to send it to your client, it will show here, obviously, because it's a cart that you created from a project board or multiple project boards. And you'll see here, if an order was placed with that particular cart, you'll see the date that you actually sent the cart to the client, who it was sent to, also how much, if any, of your discount you're sharing with your client, how much they're saving, etc., and how much profit you are due to make as a commission as well. If you see any carts that have this D number here, that usually means that it is a draft cart, which means it has not been paid for yet, but it has been viewed, and the cart has been created by you or it's been created by us. And in situations where there's a couple of vendors where we have to create pro forma invoices for you, those will show with a D number. So just know that a D will always indicate draft versus a regular number, which I think now we're up to 5-digit numbers, beginning with 10, beginning with 10. Those are actually actual order numbers. And the other way that you can determine that is by the little icons over here on the right, where it actually says this has been viewed, this has been paid for, and this has been shipped. Now, if these are not highlighted for whatever reason, then it will remain unhighlighted, and then you'll know that this cart hasn't been viewed or it hasn't been paid for and it has not been shipped yet. So for example, this one here, the living room project board that I did, I actually sent this to a client back in November. And I shared a portion of my commission, my discount with the client. So this is what my commission will be. However, the person who I sent this to did not see it yet. They have not paid for it, and it has not shipped. So this is a really good determination as to whether or not, well, maybe I want to delete this, or maybe I need to update my project board, etc. Just know that this cart summary page is meant for you to kind of understand what carts you have created and which carts you have sent to your clients already, and which ones that may be out of date and you can get rid of or delete.
Hey, Robert, there's a quick question in the chat.
Yeah.
Will DHC show currencies in Canadian dollars at some point?
We will. We were looking to actually have that done by the end of Q4 last year, but that is something that's on tap for Q1 of this year. So it will not only display, but we will also be able to transact in Canadian dollars as well. So look for that coming up this quarter. All right. So let's go to...
Before you go forward, one more quick question. If the client has not viewed the cart, is there a reminder email that gets sent to them about it?
Good question. Right now, there is not a reminder. I think that's actually a really nice... That's really good feedback for us, and it's nice to have. So it could be something that we enact and enable in the future. So thank you. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and create a project. This is pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. I put my first, last name, my client's email here, and then there's also a project descriptor, which is a free text field that I can just put as many items as I want or many notes that I want to about the project. I can also select to share a portion of my discount or not. So that's really nice as well. Let's just say for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to only share 5% of my discount, which is fine. And then I can put in here what my total project budget is, what if there's FF&M, they have F&M budget, also what my install date is. This is extremely helpful for us because if you do utilize the concierge and we are looking for items for you, potentially, we can understand, well, based on this, you're not going to get the item by the install date. So we can look for things that meet your install date if you have that information already in your project when you create it. And then, of course, the site address, phone number, and then just click Create Project. And what that does is now takes you to the project page. I have that little LastPass button because that actually keeps all of my passcodes for me, but that's not part of our system. And then what I can do from here is I can create a board within that project. So if I just click on the down arrow here, you'll see this is all the information. I created this project on that date. Here's my target install date. Here's the suggested amount that I'm going to be sharing with my client. This is what I'm potentially going to be making as my profit margin. And then I'm going to go ahead and just click a board to create a board. Typically, people create boards by room. So, you know, living room, primary, outdoor. They can also do it. You can also do it by vendor or by type of item. So you can see here we have bed linens, potentially new items, or we can select just vendor. So if we were just looking at forehands or uttermost or whomever, we can create boards based on vendors or room names. Typically, it's by room name. So I'm going to go ahead and indicate this is the living room. Again, I can change my discount here. So maybe I'm working more on this particular board and this particular project. So I'm just going to give a 2% discount rather than a 5% discount for this particular room. And then click Create Board. And now this takes me to the project board page where I can start sourcing items just by clicking on the Add My Own Product or Start Sourcing Now button. And then I can also add my own items here if I want to as well. So maybe you have like a vintage item, for example. You can actually add those items here, which is really nice. And then that is actually stuck onto the cart when you create your cart as well. And we'll go through how to do that. So it's really nice. You can add your own products or services as well. And then also just start sourcing from this page. Or you can literally just go right to, let's just say, sofas. And instead of adding items to your cart, which only adds it to the site cart, I'm going to add this to my board that I just created. So instead of clicking Add to Cart, I'm going to click Add.
I think you just got muted, Robert.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Guess we're having some technical difficulties in the new year. Sorry about that. So I'll just go back to where I was at. When I clicked into the sofa page here, instead of clicking Add to Cart, I'm going to click Add to Board, because when you click Add to Cart, it just adds it to the site cart here. So it doesn't associate it to any project or any board. So as you can see here, here is the board that I just created. I'm going to click that. It says now that it's added to that particular project. I can click on that project from the drop-down menu. And now I can see that particular sofa here in the board. Now, you'll note a few things here. Because we're only sharing 2% of my total discount, it's only reflecting the price that I'm sharing with my client. This does not reflect your full discount. It's just the amount that you're going to be sharing with your client. And you'll see here, this is actually what your cost is, and this is what your profit is for this particular item. You don't have to obviously share a portion of your discount. That's just something that we added as a nice thing to have. Whatever you want to share is what you want to share. There's many designers who don't share any of their discount, which we strongly encourage, because this is one of the ways that you make a lot of money is through product. But you do have the ability to share a portion of your discount. Just know that your clients will never know what that total amount is. They will only see the amount that you shared with them. And then similarly, when they get the items, we never include a copy of an invoice which shows your total discount. We only include a packing slip from the vendor. And that never shows the price of the item. It only shows what the item is and the quantity, and that's all. So before you get to creating a cart, you may want to be in a more collaborative state. So you can collaborate with your client by sharing a board with or without prices. And let's just say I'm going to do it for the sake of collaboration. I'm just going to do it without pricing. I can send it through here. So I can send a message directly to my client from here. Again, I can select with or without pricing with the radio button here. This will also copy me directly. It's automatically defaulted to CC myself. Or I can just click the copy link button here and cut and paste that into an email on my own email and send it to my client as well. One thing that's a little different with this rather than with a cart is that obviously this is not transactional. So it's just when you're in the collaborative state with your client. You will not be able to, and they will not be able to remove items or change quantities. It's literally just talking about and collaborating with your client. These are my ideas. This is what I'm thinking about, etc. Now, once you get to the point of actually being transactional, then you can actually create the cart from this particular project board or multiple boards and click the checkout. And there's a couple of different options here. One is I can go ahead and just check out with my own card. I take the full discount and then I invoice my client offline. A lot of our clients do that. A lot of our members do that. But there's a couple of other ways that you can do this as well. One is checking out with your client's card. So maybe your client's like, hey, I don't have time to deal with all this. Here's my card number. Can you just go ahead and make the decisions once they've given you the approval? I can do that and I can just check it out. I can check out with my client's card and be done with it. I can also send them this particular board or multiple boards and have them transact directly. So if you don't want to be involved in having your client's credit card information, have the burden of that responsibility, you can send this directly to your client. So if we do that, let's just click here. I can select as many boards as I want to here that I've created for this particular project. I only have created one board, so there's only one board to select, and then click Create Cart. And then I can change the information here. So let's say maybe if I want to send this to one of my client's assistants, or to the husband, or to the wife, or to whomever, I can change this information here and send it to whoever I wish. Again, you can put an email subject, a message. It also copies you directly. It also verifies what your total discount is, and also how much you're sharing. So I can still change this if I need to. Maybe I spent more time and I only want to share like 0.5% or 1% of my discount. Whatever the case might be, you have the ability to make these changes before you send this information.
Robert, quick question in the chat. If the cart is sent direct, oh no, I missed one. How does the collaboration work? Can they approve, deny, or comment like in design files?
Yeah, very good question. So in the collaboration portion, not this transactional portion here, it is literally just sending a link to the project board and that's it. So there is no way for them to currently comment. I think that's also some really good feedback for us. It would be wonderful, I think, for your clients to be able to comment directly and have it go back to you. But it's really just meant to be like, here's my inspiration, here's what I'm thinking about for your project, and then for you to discuss it separately.
Okay, great. And if the cart is sent directly to the client and they use their card, is there a card transaction fee applied? And can you send to multiple emails at the same time?
We currently don't have the ability to send to multiple emails at the same time, and there is no transaction fee. The transaction fee is something that we assume and is automatically just a part of the transaction, but there is no separate line item for a processing fee. Now, the one caveat to that being, if you are adding your own product or service, there is just a 2.75% processing fee for the items that you're adding. But again, that is something that is a pass through to your client, and they likely will not even see that because they're just it's automatically going to be charged to them. But we do not charge a processing fee for any items that are purchased through Daniel House Club. We assume that charge. Couple of other things here with the checkout screen. You can change quantities or remove items. You can also add side mark or delivery notes. This is particularly helpful if you are sending something to a receiver. You can indicate your name, your project name, your client's name, however they want you to indicate a side mark or a delivery note. Or you can also send us a delivery note. So, you can let us know if you want to have this sent FedEx. If it's available to be sent FedEx, we will let you know. If not, then we will contact you. Our concierge services team will contact you to let you know this particular sofa cannot be sent Federal Express. It has to go freight, something to that effect. But you can put in delivery notes here or side marks, however you see fit. Again, as I mentioned, with adding your own products or services, this is a really nice function. So if you did want to include your fee here, you could include your fee. You can add your service fee here. Or you can add a vintage product or any other product for that matter that you've purchased offline. So if you just wanted to make this your primary invoicing, you can do that. Really, really helpful functionality with that.
Hey, Robert, are there any updates on the ability to individually price items versus based on a percentage? For example, if a Loy rug is cheaper with an online retailer, can we change the price?
Yeah, right now we don't have the ability to do that on a per line item basis. Again, that was something we were looking to do by Q4. I have a feeling it will likely be done by this quarter, Q1. That is definitely on our product roadmap to do. So if you have items where you want to have different discounts, then just create a project board for it. And that's why I was saying maybe for particular vendors, you may want to do that. And you can add items from that vendor to that project board. And then when you create the cart, you can just pull it from that particular board itself. But right now we don't have the ability to change just individual line item prices. But that will be upcoming. The other thing that we are going to be doing is you'll have the ability to edit the description. So instead of this saying Sabine sofa, you'll be able to just put 87-inch sofa, something to that effect. So that is also something that we're currently working on. And hopefully we'll make it so that your clients don't shop you so much. I know in this world that we're living in, people like to shop us, even our clients, which is very annoying. So hopefully that will alleviate some of that. But that is something that is an upcoming feature as well. And then we just click the shipping feature. Currently, we only ship to the US and Canada. And then we can select our level of service. There's 4 different levels of service: residential curbside, expedited curbside, room of choice with packaging removal, and white glove. Super important here, if you're using a receiver, you can just say residential curbside or expedited curbside, depending on when you need it. With the room of choice option, what they do with room of choice is they basically do everything that white glove does except for assembly. So they will take it in, they will put it into the room of choice, and they will take the packaging materials. White glove, of course, will do everything that room of choice does, and then they also assemble items. So they'll assemble beds, they'll assemble bookcases, things like that. They will not install, however. So that is a very important point here. If you have something that needs to be installed, maybe a bookcase that needs to be affixed to a wall, they will not do that. They will just assemble furniture and assemble pieces. And then we can click preview, and then basically just go, oh, I didn't select my shipping. That would be helpful. See, we have these little fail safes in place. And then we go to the cart preview, and I can still make edits here. So I can remove items, I can change quantities, I can go back and edit by clicking the edit button here. And then also it'll just say, oh, well, this particular item, there is going to be sales tax applied to it. If you're in a state where you have applicable sales tax. Currently, we only are charging sales tax for California, Florida, North Carolina, and New York. Those are the 4 states that we have tax impetus nexus for charging a state sales tax. If you do not want to have sales tax included with your order, just send us your resale certificate and we can have that applied to your account accordingly. And then we just click send, and that will send the cart. And you see here, it'll say success, your cart has been sent. And then the email that you get, that your client gets, will just say, Robert Fodor has shared this cart with you. So it won't even say Daniel House Club. I think down at the bottom, it says in very, very small print, powered by Daniel House Club, but it will always say your name and that you have shared a cart. Same thing with the board. If you decide to use our system to send a message through, it will say Robert Fodor has shared a board with you. So it doesn't really brand it to you directly. We are looking also to have your branding as part of this, and that's something that we're hopefully looking to do this year. We were wanting to do that towards the end of last year, but we just couldn't get around to it. So we'll probably have something like a white label, if you're familiar with that term, where you can actually upload like your logo and your name and sort of customize things. That's going to be in the future, which will be really nice.
Hey, Robert, I'm just jumping in to say it's 9:34.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Essentially, let's move to Wendy. Although it has been, I learned something every time I attend these. So.
I just wanted to quickly go over a few things on the product information page before we hand this over to Wendy. The first one is you will always see the retail price, the MAP price, and your price, your membership price indicated here. Now, sometimes vendors do not provide us with retail. They'll just provide us with MAP. So you'll still see the MAP price here and then what your membership price is here. We do that deliberately so that you can see that you actually, are saving quite a bit of money by being a Daniel House Club member. And then the only other thing I just want to point people to are the return policies. We do not have our own return policy. We enforce the return policies of our vendors. So please be advised that some vendors do not accept remorse returns. So if your clients are, if you think your clients may change their mind, etc., just double check that the item you can actually return it, that the actual vendor requires and will accept remorse returns. Now, there are a couple of fail safes around this. So when you add an item to a cart and you create the cart, we will indicate, you'll have a little note that says you have an item here that does not accept remorse returns. And that gives you a little indicator. As an interior designer myself, I actually just used to write it into my contracts that no remorse returns were allowed. So you can always do that as well. But that's also just a fail-safe method for all of you. Okay. All right. So with that, I'm going to come back on video and we will go ahead and I want to introduce Wendy Estela. Wendy is an attorney in Connecticut. And Wendy, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank God, because my camera is broken, officially
Oh,
broken,
no.
so you can't see me. But my slides have my picture, and so does Instagram. So hi, everyone. Happy New Year.
So not only did we get a proper benediction at the beginning with some random audio, but I also had a little bit of an AV problem as well. So hey, it's the new year.
Yeah, nothing like starting the year like with a major, strike of anxiety. So, just as a little,
didn't want to do your hair this morning, but
what was? So thank you everybody for having me, Peter, Robert, Joanna. I really appreciate it. I do have slides, so you wouldn't be looking at me anyway. So I know Robert's going to help with that. So thank you. And And also just to echo what you were saying, I'm going to tell you a lot of little tips about contracts, but I always say just put in no returns into your contracts because, everything, just about everything is custom. And if it's not custom, it's pretty close to being custom. And why should you handle the returns? I mean, you're there to design and to sell, and you really don't want to be dealing with somebody's buyer's remorse. Many designers don't charge for that time, which they should. And then now you've got this stuff. If, your client has an expectation now it's going to be able to be returned. If the manufacturer won't take it back, the vendor won't take it back, you're stuck with it. Some designers will take it and then put it into another house or something, but you don't want to be doing that. So just say no returns, no returns. I see a lot of contracts that say custom items have no returns, but again, just say no returns. You can always deviate from your own rule. I mean, every designer I talk to is like, I want to make it right for my client. That's fine, but don't give them an inch because they'll take a yard. Draw a firm line and say no returns. You can always give them a return, but don't make it a thing that's an option.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you, Wendy.
Yeah.
That was something that I had in my contracts. I think Peter may have in his contracts. And it's, you, by the time you've gotten to the point of transacting and getting the item, you've made decisions. These are
right.
None of these are surprises. So I wholly agree with that.
Yeah. So before I get started, I just want to have an idea of how much time I have because that will dictate how fast I go through things.
Yeah. So technically we have until 1, but sometimes we do spill over a couple minutes,
okay.
like 5 minutes or so. So we don't have a hard stop.
Okay.
And then
anybody
who wants to hang on can. I understand that, sometimes people have to get going and that's fine.
Yeah.
For those of you who do have to go off at 1, just know that we do record these sessions and they're in our club bulletin section on our website. So with that, I will let you take it away, Wendy.
Okay, so I'm going to move things along quickly because I have a lot of slides. Very quickly, the presentation slide here, the first one is the title, planning for design contract disputes, safeguarding creativity and collaboration. The key thing I'm going to hit on here is that your contract is good. Okay, it's good to have a contract that legally protects you. Not every fight you have with your client is something where you're going to whip out the contract and shove it in their face or sue them over it. Okay, there are a lot of things that come up in the course of a project that you just have to deal with. They're conflicts. And, when I read these contracts and I write these contracts, I try to build in interim ways to deal with issues that come up. So one quick example is, let's say your client says that they're going to spend $300,000 on furnishings for their huge home. And then after they spend money on your design and they look at everything, they decide they're really cutting that back and they're only going to spend $100,000. I always say to my client in that situation, what are you going to do? Are you going to turn around and fire your homeowner client because they had committed to spending $300 and now are only spending $100? Very rarely does the designer actually terminate the contract based on something like that. Unfortunately, you're just going to deal with it. So there are a lot of situations like that where even though the contract might say that the client has legally committed to do something, you as a designer are in an interesting situation because you're not necessarily going to enforce your contract. What's the remedy at that point? So what I want you to ask when you look at your contract and you think of these situations are, okay, this thing happened. What is my remedy? What is my recourse? Because we automatically think go to the contract and enforce the contract, but there are little steps in between. And, people think it's suing or going to court or things like that. You've got to build in ways in between to kind of resolve these disputes. And it's going to come down to a lot of communication. So let's go to the first slide. These are the things that we're going to cover. I think I just kind of talked about those. We're going to go over some case studies to kind of bring what I'm saying to life. So, we'll talk about planning and expecting disputes is a very important thing as a designer. You have to get into the mindset that no relationship is perfect, and even the best relationships have arguments. It's no different with your clients. You've got to figure out a way to kind of get through those little skirmishes and keep going. And you've got to have things in your contract that are written in so that when there's like a dispute, it lands with the designer to solve it. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll go through the case studies. Next slide. So you've got to plan for the dispute, because a lot of times I'll get phone calls from my designer clients who will say, you know, this is what's happening. I don't know what to do. This client's being really difficult. Well, that's going to happen on just about every job. I would say that the exception is the client that's easy. Okay. So you have to plan for it, and you've got to make sure, if you look at the third bullet there, that you still have the power in that dispute or negotiation. And really, as a designer or any service provider, the minute you sign the contract with your client, you lose your leverage, because up until the moment that you sign, you're selling, they want you. But when they sign with you and they hire you and now they're paying you, they're the boss, they're the client, they're the customer's always right. And that kind of power shift happens. So how do you fix that? You make sure that your contract actually gives you the final say in certain circumstances. And those are what I call like interim contract remedies, because again, these aren't all things that are going to court. So next slide. Where things go wrong. When do problems arise in contracts? I find that when there's a miscommunication or unclear expectations, that's where there are problems. So for example, today I spoke with a designer. We're finishing up her contract, and I said, we really need to have a clear description of what your process is, meaning what are you going to do? What are you doing for this client? What are the deliverables? Because most of your clients have either never worked with a designer before, or they did work with a designer, and that designer does things differently than you do. And for example, I know a lot of designers will use Pinterest boards, or will ask their client to put together a Pinterest board with their ideas, or they'll want inspiration. Some designers don't want to go near Pinterest, right? So if you've got a client who loves Pinterest and you as the designer don't want to see anything to do with Pinterest, that needs to be communicated. Everybody's way of gathering information from their new client is different. And, you know, you have to basically take that new client and erase what they know about the design process and fill their brain with what you do. So that's important to have in your contract, not only written, but you also want to explain it to the client. Because the other thing I find is that no matter how well written the contract is, many clients are not reading it. So at least if you sit down and walk them through it over a cup of coffee or whatever it may be, there you can visually see if they're nodding their head, if they're understanding what you're saying. The contract should really just capture those conversations, and they go hand in hand. So I wouldn't just rely on the contract, and I wouldn't just rely on the conversation. It's got to be both. So the poorly drafted contracts and the lack of explaining a contract, that leads to ambiguities or things that are just unclear, usually over the scope, the payment terms, and the process, the rights in the contract. Other things that I see often go wrong in contracts, and this is based on, you know, just my experience working with dozens of designers who call me with their problems, are conflicts with third parties. So obviously suppliers, you have your schedule issues, you've got things that arrive broken or wrong, and also contractors. So when you are executing a design, the contractor sometimes will do it incorrectly, or they'll apply their own version of the design, or they will basically exercise their influence over the client despite your design. So that's a typical conflict I'll see. So the designer managing the various personalities and parties that are part of a design project is a big issue. It's hard to do. Other issues, intellectual property misunderstandings. So at the end of the project, let's say that you are terminated early, or you terminate your client early, and they say, okay, that's fine. I'm going to pay you the full amount that I owe you for the design, but now I want to take it and do it myself. And I want all the vendor information too. And I want all the SKUs, and I want everything so I can go purchase it. Who does that belong to? That's a question, and your contract needs to address it. And you need to be it needs to be clear in the contract so that your lawyer or whoever's helping you end the deal can point back and say, hey, you know, even though you paid us to create this, it's still ours. It doesn't belong to you. So that's another issue that will come up. Vendor bankruptcy has been a common theme of 2024, hopefully not 2025, but we'll talk about that. And our friends here at Daniel House Club can help with some of that because they're in between. So, you know, the vendor bankruptcy is always challenging because on the one hand, your clients are trusting you to pick out vendors that are going to deliver. But then on the other hand, if you have bought directly from a vendor and they just disappear, you want to turn around and share that risk with your client. So it's a very tricky situation to be in, and probably one of the hardest I've seen to navigate as a designer. And finally, clients do not understand what you get out of the deal, meaning they don't understand how you as a designer are making money and what you get out of taking their project. And what I'm hinting at here is photography rights. I get a lot of clients that call and say, you know, I'm at the end of this project. We've had a lot of challenges. The client is tired of me. They want me to be done. I'm afraid they're not going to let me photograph it, but I really need these photographs. So those are some very common issues, and we'll go into more detail. Next slide. And by the way, anyone can interrupt at any point. So if there's any other topics you'd like to discuss. So, you know, you want to always figure out a way to resolve a dispute without it being a battle. And, you know, I think that's one thing that people misunderstand, especially when lawyers are involved too, is that, you know, you see so much on TV where fights are screaming matches and one person is really assertive and the other one just gives in and it's a win-lose situation. What you have to realize is that most fights, even when they're over large dollar amounts, are better resolved with a win-win approach. So you have to look at these disputes and figure out a way to end the dispute with each party getting something that works for them. And it's going to typically be a compromise situation, but there doesn't have to be a winner and a loser. It can be a win-win. So that's the third bullet there. When a client is yelling at you or upset about something, the best advice I could give is to remain calm and professional and don't give it back to them. So it's tempting when you've got a project where there's been a lot of stress and tension and, you know, maybe passive aggressive actions, and then somebody lets it out. It's very easy to also let it out in exchange. My advice would be do everything you can to not do that. Be calm and let your client just vent. Let them let it out and just listen. And the best thing you can say is, I understand. I'm sorry this is happening. What can I do to help? And when you ask that question, it kind of diffuses them. They can't continue yelling at you when you say, what can I do to help? So even though you might not want to help them and you hate them also, you don't want to respond in the way that they are speaking to you. So stay calm, think about the win-win. You're going to want to document issues. Obviously, I think everyone does a good job of that. And I think that lesson has been hammered into everyone's head that if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. So you're going to want to make sure that if you have a conversation with a client, you may have agreed to something in a conversation, but you might want to follow up in an email and say, dear client, to confirm our conversation from today, this is what's going to happen. That's really helpful. So let's say now that you can't manage those issues and everything's escalating, what's next? You know, people are, both clients and designers are tempted to hand something over to their attorney. I typically, if I have a designer that calls me, I will coach them first and say, listen, you do not want me to send a letter to your client because when they see it on my letterhead, they're going to immediately react and hand it to their lawyer. And you don't want to be in that situation. You're better off letting me kind of draft a response for you that comes from you that is thought through from a legal standpoint, but that's coming from you. That's really the best way, because the minute you involve lawyers or threaten to involve lawyers, everything ramps up. And on the other side, on the client side, those lawyers, they are the ones that are looking to make money off of their wealthy clients who are also your clients. And those wealthy clients want to win. So what I was talking about, the win-win of it all, that's important. But when you get your client to have a lawyer involved, those lawyers they're not paid to come up with a compromise. They're paid to win. And those clients that you have, when they switch into being angry at you, my experience is that they're very entitled. They have the money and they will fight. And you're not going to be equally matched because you're a small business. So you want to avoid that escalation at all costs. So before you involve lawyers with lawyer letterhead, okay, letters going back and forth with that letterhead, you want to address it on your own and offer some sort of informal way of resolving it. So if you do feel like you're getting to a point of really fighting and it's escalating beyond something you can handle, you might want to suggest a mediation or some sort of collaborative approach that you can talk about with your lawyer behind the scenes. And again, it would be something that you could offer to your client without mentioning that you've talked to your lawyer about it. So again, these are kind of like things you navigate in the moment, but I really recommend against having letters being sent from a lawyer too early. Next slide. Okay, this is what I want to get into, is the case study. So these are actual situations that I've dealt with in the past year, and I think they're just very interesting to talk through, so you can see my thought process and what yours should be. So I'm just going to read this. Your client signed your contract that clearly states that you as the designer have the legal right to photograph the project at all phases and upon completion. The project went smoothly. The client was a dream. However, now they do not feel comfortable having their home photographed and their privacy invaded despite what they signed. They paid you in full, and aside from the hiccup, the project was a success. However, you are counting on these photos for your portfolio and to submit to shelter publications. They were a big reason you took the project. So I know I don't see everyone here, but I'm sure there are people who've been in this situation. And the answer here is communication is always key. Now, some of my answers are going to go, require a time machine to go back in time, okay, to when you signed the contract. So luckily we're in a training session here, but really what you have to do from day one with your contract is, and your client relationship, is to explain to the client why photography is so important. Because guess what? They do not understand, okay? They do not understand why photography is so important to you. As a matter of fact, they don't understand anything about this industry. You all as designers are friends with other designers. You go to market, you join groups like this, like you are networking with other designers. You know this industry. The typical client doesn't know it. The typical lawyer doesn't know it. I know it because I have so many designers as clients. Okay. So you need to upfront, when you have your contract with the client, I always put mine in the form of a letter of agreement. And in the cover letter, I just recently started adding a paragraph to say, dear client, the letter basically says, dear client, we're so excited to work on this project. It's going to be amazing. Attached is our contract. You will see in the contract that we are compensated in a number of ways, including the design fee, the markup, or whatever you want to call it, our product sales, okay, execution hours, and with the opportunity to photograph this project to include it in our portfolio. So now if you include that in the cover letter, you're telling them right up front, that's part of the deal for me. Okay. And so that's really important because they don't get it. They don't get why it's so important. And I'm telling you, they don't understand it. So you want to not only have the clause in your contract giving you the right to photograph. Okay, I think just about everybody knows that at this point. You want to put it in the cover letter, but you're going to go back to that contract clause and you're going to add a penalty if they don't give you the photography rights. So going, like, we don't have to go back on the slide, but think of the example, right? You can now say in your contract, and this is going to probably surprise people with the dollar amount, but you want to say, if client does not allow designer to photograph the project in accordance with this provision, then client shall pay designer liquidated damages in the amount of, and it's going to be a big number, 5, 10,000, whatever you think is the value you would be losing by not having the right to photograph the project. Now, the client might look at that and be like, $10,000? Why would I be paying you $10,000 if I don't let you photograph the project? And you're going to say, well, I'm glad you've noticed that, because I never want to send you an invoice for $10,000 ever. And if you just agree that we're going to photograph like we've been talking about, then you're never going to get an invoice for $10,000. But if you don't let me do this at the end of the project, then that's what's going to happen. Now, the reason you have to do this is this. If you are at the end of the project, you've been paid in full, you don't have the right to photograph because the client has blocked you. If you go to court or arbitration to sue for the right to photograph that project, first of all, it's going to be very expensive to go to court. Now, you go to hire an attorney for something like this, you're paying a retainer of like $15,000 just to get your day in court. Secondly, let's pretend you're in front of a judge right now. Your client is so mad at you because you're suing them. Okay. Do you think there's any judge that's going to let you enter that client's house for 3 days to photograph your work? No. They're going to say, listen, I can't allow you into this person's house. What dollar amount will make this right for you? You clearly had the right to photograph. They clearly are not allowing it. What's the dollar amount? So this is why, if you at the outset of your contract put the dollar amount in, you're circumventing all of that. Now, I was at Market and I was giving a presentation, and afterwards there was a woman in the audience who came up to me, and she's a judge in Delaware. I'm like, why are you here? Her daughter's a designer. And she was so happy. She's like, I love that you said that, because I would never want that court case in my court. I would never allow somebody in to photograph a house, even if they had the right. So that was very validating to me, because I sort of like created this remedy, but it's true. I mean, yes, I can. And by the way, I can send that out to you all after this. I can send you an example of a good photography rights section with the liquidated damages. But yeah, the judge, she agreed completely, because there's just no way. I mean, there's no way. Think of your worst enemy. You're getting sued. You've been served. You're going to let that person into your house? No. So by having the number in the contract, that big dollar amount, it raises the issue. It creates a discussion with the client. Okay. And again, you're going to say, I've never had to send an invoice for this. I've never had to use this provision. I never want to use this provision, but I do want my photos, and you need to know how important they are. So that's photography. That's how you get your rights. I've had many people call me because they want that bulletproof provision in their contract. And this is the conversation I have with them. So next slide. And yes, can you hold the retainer? Yeah, you can hold the retainer. You can. But it's probably still not enough to cover what you've lost. I mean, I find that designers are charging really low retainers, and it should be like it should be the value of like your last invoice, whatever you project that to be. That's what your retainer should be, because, and when I say last, your last invoice could be, your peak highest month billing in the course of a project if you're doing hourly, okay? Because that client could just not pay you, and that is your last invoice. So you really need to push and make sure that retainer covers you Retainers are sort of like a different topic. I don't think I cover it here, but some retainers are designers will bill against it on a monthly basis. Others will hold it against the last invoice. I recommend holding it against the last invoice because doing a monthly reconciliation is a lot of work, and it's very easy to mess it up. So, but that's a topic for another day. I'm happy to talk more about that. Case study number.
Real
Yep, go
quick,
ahead.
it just quick time check. It's just a little bit after 1 o'clock. So
Of course.
obviously feel free, anybody who's on, to stay on until Wendy's done with her presentation, but just wanted to give a quick time check. So
Yeah, I think I have like 4 case studies. So I'm going to go super fast now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, I'm thinking another 15 minutes probably. So,
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Case study number 2, early termination, client wants everything. So your client your contract gives you the right to terminate for any reason. You and your clients part ways amicably. So you thought, but now as you do, they're making demands. They want all creative assets for another designer to complete, and they want to purchase directly from your vendors. They also have a change of heart and want back part of the design fee because they don't think you did sufficient work for the price. I have seen this one over and over. Okay. Next slide. So you have to negotiate a closeout settlement with your client, even if the contract's in your favor. So my biggest piece of advice here is, let's say that this is happening. Okay. You agreed to terminate. Do not give them anything until you have what we call a global settlement. You agree on every single thing. I just did this for a client last week. Okay. The client had a ton of samples from the designer. Okay. So we were like, you got to give the samples back to the designer. The designer will give you the design boards for these 3 rooms with the SKUs and all of that. And you, client, are going to pay the designer, let's just say $25,000. All of that has to happen on the same exact day. You don't give them a little bit. You don't give them the design boards, then wait for them to give you the samples back. It all happens at once. Okay. Because otherwise, if you start giving things back piecemeal, you're never going to get your payment because they're starting to get it from you. And these are very smart, sophisticated, entitled clients when they're mad, and they are manipulative too. They know exactly what they're doing and they will get it out of you on a piecemeal basis. Okay. So again, these are very lovely clients when they're good, but when they are bad, you are getting the worst of the worst. And I can say this about them. You can't because they're your clients, but they're narcissists. They're entitled. They are the worst of the worst. And I've seen a lot of different business clients and disputes, but the aggrieved homeowner who thinks they've paid too much to the designer is the worst client. They are going to say, don't you know who I am? They're going to say, I'm going to ruin your reputation. The other thing that they're going to do is they are going to use the threat of a negative Google review over your head, or they will actually do it and they will use that as leverage. So, you need to keep your cool at all times, like I said in the first slide, because you don't want that. But when you do get them what they need, you're going to have a written settlement agreement, which now replaces your contract. That's when you call the lawyer because you want the lawyer to write it up. And in that, you're going to say, by the way, the terms of the settlement are confidential and neither party is disparaging the other, including online reviews. So obviously you don't even typically have the right to online review your client, but they have the right to review you. And whatever you give them, you get that in return. That is more important than payment, I would say, because I've seen businesses get destroyed by a bad review. Next slide. So in your contract on these terms, like along with this last case study, you need confidentiality language in your contract that says everything in the contract is confidential. You need specific language in your contract to tell the client that in any event, they're not allowed to contact the vendor and say that they are working with you or part of your business. Clients love to do that. You need intellectual property language that is very clear that if there's a replacement designer, they cannot take credit for your work. And you can also decide if you're going to provide your assets or not, and if so, in what format. So another great example, you can say that you're going to give the client the drawings, quote drawings, right? It doesn't mean you're giving them a CAD file. You could be giving them a PDF. And I've had that situation where I took over for another attorney. One of my very high-end New York City clients fired their attorney because they charged my client a ton of fees. And I just was taking over a settlement kind of halfway through. And in the settlement, it said that my client would give over drawings to the other client, to his client. And so we produced actual printed drawings. And the client, even though they agreed to this as part of the settlement, they were livid because they wanted the CAD file. Well, you know what? Not all attorneys understand this industry. And I said to my client, a drawing's a drawing. I mean, we went through, and I went through Chat GPT on this one. I'm like, tell me I'm right. I basically went through, you know what? You've got a CAD file versus a drawing. A drawing is the printout, or it's a PDF. That's it. There's no way that the word drawing means to give the native file. So we won on that one because the attorneys that drafted the settlement didn't think it through. The client really wanted the CAD file to hand to the other designer. And then also design fees should always be non-refundable. So if you have these 4 things in your contract, you're in a position of power when you're settling these disputes, because you're already saying that everything is confidential and nobody else can take it and you can't talk to a vendor. And also, you know, everything is just confidential, meaning if they went onto Google to review you and started to talk about confidential things, you really have a better stance to get that taken down. Next slide. All right, replacement designer, the similar issue. Replacement designer on the project we just discussed, completed and photographed the project. It's all over Instagram. The problem is that you completed 90% of the work and some of your signature style is showcased in the design. You have reached out to the new designer to try to resolve the misunderstanding. They have ghosted you. Why? Your lawyer does not suggest a cease and desist letter. Now what? Next slide. So here, I really recommend against designers going after other designers. Okay. It's expensive. The law is not clear. You didn't have a deal with that replacement designer. Your remedy in your contract is against your client, not the replacement designer. It is very tempting to go after the other designer, especially if they're a competitor, but don't do that to your industry. Like I am not a designer, but I love this industry too much. I work with too many of you. You work too hard to build your businesses. You are single parents, you are small businesses, you are building your businesses and you're all trying to do the best you can. Don't attack each other as much as it might be tempting to do so, okay? Going forward, your client contract should require the client to instruct the replacement designer as to how to transition the project. So contract should say, client will ensure that any replacement designer is aware that they don't have the right to take this stuff and continue. Okay. And there's also a term called indemnification, which means if that situation I just described happened, you go back and sue your client or make a claim against them. You write a nasty letter to the client saying, hey, you better get your new designer to take that post down or I'm coming after you. Now, again, it's not great to bring in lawyers, but in that case, it's a threat. And, we can put pressure. There's ways to put pressure. So, but you want the pressure on the client, not on the designer. Next slide. All right, I'm cranking through these. So designer's vision clashes with contractor's execution. Client sides with contractor. Contractor is the go-to for the client and the designer is the odd man out. The contractor is changing the designer's design and is requiring the client to sign change orders. Okay, so I always say this is the classic power struggle on a project because the contractors have the confidence that the designers don't have. These contractors walk around, they know how to ask for money. Historically, that's what they do. They love their change orders, and the designers feel bad and just want everything to be pretty. And they often buy things for their clients that they're not even getting paid for because they want it to be right. So you've got two completely different personality types at odds, and typically the contractor is going to win. So next slide. How do you deal with that? So you want to address this immediately. If you can, you're going to have regular meetings. And if the contractor is not maintaining a schedule, you need to try to create one. The scheduling with the contractor is a big problem, by the way. That can cost you a lot of money, and they can resequence things and ask you to do things that you were planning to do in the future, and it will cost you money. So you want to schedule. You want to try to avoid escalation with a contractor and build a collaborative relationship with them, even if you don't like them. Okay. You've got to remind the client that they paid you to create a vision. Okay. And the contractor's executing it. You are not tasked with the means and methods of the execution, meaning like how they're going to build it. But your job is the design vision. So another thing I see in contracts is we oversee the project execution. No, you don't. You oversee the design execution. Very important difference. And that's sort of like a topic I want to really tackle in 2025 because I see it written wrong in every contract. So, and designers love to say, we're not project managers. You're right, you're not. But you shouldn't even have to say that because all you're doing is ensuring that the design is correct. Okay. You're not managing the plumber. You're not managing the GC, so it's very important to get that right. In future contracts, you really want to clarify the designer and the contractor's roles, include some sort of protocol for communication and instructions and changes, and include a change order trigger and hourly rates for work related to contractor changes. So I've seen a lot of creative things with how designers manage their contractors. And I have one who does a great job. They basically just get paid based on anything that the contractor charges, they get 1% also. So they get the copied on any invoice from the contractor and they add on 1%, and that's how they get paid. So now they're aligned with the contractor. Contractors doing the dirty work of getting the change orders, and the designer's just getting paid. So there are a lot of ways to attack it, but you have to understand that the nature of a contractor, and I have worked with many of them. That was my career prior to working with designers, was with contractors. They bid low, they sign up for their contract, and it's change order, change order, change order. So they will throw you under the bus if there's a way to change your design in a way to make more money. I know I'm disparaging everybody, but it's true. I'm disparaging the homeowner client and the contractor, but a lot of it is true. Next slide. All right, so this is the one that really ties into Daniel House Club. So the vendor stops responding midway through production, later declares bankruptcy. You have $60,000 in orders with the vendor. You paid in full, and now the client is looking for their money back. You would be amazed, thank you, at how many designers ask me to write a letter to the client saying they're not getting their money back. I'm sorry, but that's not fair. Okay. And that's what I will tell you. It's not fair on the one hand to say, pay me in full and there's no returns. But then on the other hand, you're saying you paid me in full, there's no returns. And by the way, I picked somebody who went out of business and now you don't get your money back. I mean, that's how you can destroy the industry single-handedly, I mean, now this is a situation you've got to manage. So you cannot hide it from the client. You have to be transparent. What I just described is the risk of being a designer. That is your risk, okay? Your job is to find the good vendors. And now we've got these very reputable, long-standing manufacturers just tanking, okay? So it's a very real risk. So in this situation, how I saw this happen, and I won't name the big, the big furniture company that I got many phone calls about when this happened, but you want to track down your vendor contacts. Like there are people that were your people. Okay. You can track them down. They might be able to help. The main thing I saw that was helpful was bank and credit card companies were able to put a stop to things. They were able to, depending on how long ago you placed the order, they were able to stop and put a chargeback, we call it, on the account. So that's you calling your credit card company or your bank if you used a debit card, because a lot of people did, and saying, please help me. they did help. The banks and credit card companies were hugely helpful in that situation. Also, call your insurance company. And if you don't have insurance, you need to get insurance. That's, again, another topic for another day. Next slide. Oh, by the way, the last part of that I didn't say is, obviously, if you're working with Daniel House Club, that issue is not your issue. Okay. And I mean, I will let Robert or Peter talk about that, but obviously everything you know about Daniel House Club, this is, they're helping you with this. They're managing that. So that's, to me, such a huge benefit of working with them. Okay. Because that risk has evaporated. And I think that from my experience over the past few years in particular, that is one of the biggest emerging risks that is very much out of your control. Okay. Because the industry is just such that you don't know who's going out of business. So procurement is a very difficult thing to manage. And when you have this added variable of companies that are just taking your money and going out of business, a $60,000 order that doesn't get fulfilled, that you cannot deliver to your client, can put you out of business. So really looking at Daniel House Club is something very valuable for you with that dynamic. And they handle the things with the vendors in those situations. So that's it. I've been like speed talking. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions. I can be available for another 15 minutes, and you can follow up with me with any questions.
Yeah, Wendy, real quick, just a quick sidebar on that last point about vendors. And this is also one of the reasons, yes, why you do work with Daniel House Club, but also it's one of the reasons why we as a company vet all of our vendors. So you may have a client who comes to you and says, oh, I want this, random light from somewhere. Well, we'll try to see if it's a reputable vendor, but we take vendors through pretty rigorous processes to ensure that they actually are valid and that they actually meet our own service requirements as well. So I think that's also very important, because that's a extremely valuable service that we offer to all of our members, is that we do vet all of our vendors. Now, sometimes situations, they get out of control. And sometimes, like you were saying, Wendy, some of the big vendors, sometimes they just tank because of, many different reasons. But we do vet all of our vendors. So I think that's an important thing to note as well.
Yeah, and to note that, Daniel House Club is the vendor's client. So as Wendy says, it really is our problem when that happens. So we are some insurance for you, that you are not the one who's faced with a business calamity. It's us.
Yeah, and that's one that can put you under. I had people telling me they bought sofas. They had, really $40,000 to $60,000 on a debit card, and then Mitchell Gold, Bob Williams was gone. And I mean that phone call. I'm a business lawyer, but I always say, like, your business is your life. So I'm a business lawyer, but I also am very much in tune with my people as like humans, and it's just crazy to see how that can destroy a person too. An order with a vendor, right?
Yeah.
So, the key with all of this is to make sure that there are risks in business, but you always want to find a way to mitigate them. And there are ways in your contract that you can limit how much you're sued for. You can buy insurance. If you really screw something up, your insurance company covers you. But in this kind of situation, really, what's the answer? And I think that Daniel House Club is the answer for a lot of those risks, especially if you don't feel like you're strong on procurement.
Yeah.
And does anyone really feel strong on procurement? No, I'm just kidding.
Just real quick, I put Wendy's contact information up on the screen again. So here's her email and her phone number to get in touch with her. She is licensed in Connecticut, New York, and Utah. But if you're outside of those states, I'm sure she can also recommend somebody.
I work with people across the country because your businesses, so I can take clients anywhere.
Yep.
And I'm on Instagram. I just put my Instagram in the chat. So yeah, I mean, I speak a lot to the industry. I have so many clients in this industry, and I really love it. So, and I like to consider myself as somebody who's trying to think of ways to improve the industry, not just help designers here and there. And I that's why I love being aligned with you guys, because I just think that this is such a great service you're providing to designers. I can't, I can't advocate for you enough.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why we wanted to align ourselves with you, because we really understood that, the first time I met you, which was over a lovely lunch, I might add, it was just like, oh my gosh, you totally get us. You totally understand what we're here for our members. And also you are creating a niche industry within law.
Right.
And one that's very needed. And so, yeah, I think that's truly great.
Well, I'm glad to be connected. I'm sorry my camera's broken because I'm smiling over here and wishing everyone a happy new year. And that literally never happens to me. So let's just hope that this is not an indication of what the year is going to be like. So.
Any problem? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I just did want to add, Wendy, thank you so much for your time. And I'm pretty confident this is not going to be the last thing that we do together.
I was just going to say, I think we'll have Wendy back. So hopefully, if it's not this quarter, then maybe in subsequent quarters. But yeah, I think that this is just very, very important for designers to understand, and also very pertinent to any design professional's business. So yeah.
Any follow-up questions you guys had? I know there was one about the photography language. I'm going to try to remember to do it by tomorrow, but if I don't, if Robert, maybe you could follow up with me and be like, hey, you promised that and you didn't do it. So I will do it. I'm a big fan of giving away free information because honestly, like, you should have it. And if anything, the more I give away, the more I get, more people call me. It's crazy how that works, right? So I'm a big fan of educating and giving out, and just really, I want to elevate this industry because you guys are all professionals, and I'm so impressed by the people I meet. And you do not advocate for yourselves enough. Really, it's like you got to do more.
Yep.
So.
Absolutely. Well, I think with that, we went over time, but I think it was a really good overtime. And,
as evidenced by the fact that hardly anyone left.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, yeah, I think we've had, like, honestly, no one leave. So that's great. As we started wrapping up, I think people started leaving, but anyway. All right. Well, thank you so much, Wendy. And we look forward to having you back at some point. And also, if for whatever reason you didn't get Wendy's information, feel free to just contact the concierge and we can provide you with Wendy's contact information as well. And also even loop her into a conversation if that's needed. So yeah, I think that's it. Happy New Year, everyone. January 2nd, 2025. Oh my gosh. So we will see you. Peter, are we going to have one at the end of January?
We do have one at the end, the last Thursday of this month. And actually, I believe, I'm 99% confident it's going to be the designer, Jillian Siegel, talking about her new collaborative collection with Moe's. So that should be fun.
Fantastic. That'll be great. Yeah, we saw her new collection at Fall Market, and it's beautiful. So cool. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of the concierge. You can reach us at concierge@danielhouse.club. Again, concierge@danielhouse.club. Concierge is open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time. You can contact us by phone, by email, or live chat if it's available. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.
Happy New Year.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.